Buenas tardes, buenas noches, depending on where you're at right now. I'm Cherríe Moraga. I think the retired doesn't feel like it though. The retired co-director of Las Maestras Center for Chicana Indigenous Thought, Art, and Social Praxis with Cherríe Rodriguez. It's really great. I mean, we haven't done this in a long time, and this may be, oh, well, I'm not sure. It could be the last, the Xicana or Latinx Public Voice series piece that we're doing. And if it is, I am really, really happy that it's ending in this way, that we are culminating as opposed to ending in this way with two people that, well, one person in particular, ire'ne, that I had, it was a long time coming, right? That I don't know if you invited yourself or I invited
No,
you.
you invited me first.
Okay.
I just insisted on the invitation.
She insisted, and that was good. She just really kind of kept at it. And so, and then this magical sort of combination. I always love the line that she said to me, "Don't make me beg," when I wasn't responding. And sometimes I get that way. And it wasn't for lack of desire. It was for the life, the life gets in the way. So, but this perfect combination, of suddenly finding, also uncovering Amanda Ellis's work, where she devotes so much of her critical imaginations, and inquiries on ire'ne's work. And so the idea of bringing the two of them together, we have an audience here, so if you see me sometimes go like this, I'm talking to them too. The idea of bringing the two of them together, I think because for many years, that I was here at UC Santa Barbara in Las Maestras Center, the idea of critical and creative writing and critical and creative thinking are always to me completely integral. And so they're kind of a match, in this way. So I will read you some biographical stuff about the two of them, and then we're going to go on to a conversation. We really wish Amanda could be here, but we couldn't afford it. Not that she's expensive, because we're broke. Anyway, Amanda, it's beautiful to see you in this way, even virtually. And ire'ne Payne, spending these last 3 days with you has been a blessing, So ire'ne Lara Silva it's a long list, so get ready, settle down. Is 2023 Texas State Laureate and the author of 5 poetry collections: Furia, Blood Sugar Canto, CUICACALLI, House of Song, FirstPoems, and The Eaters of Flowers. She has also published 2 chapbooks, Enduring, Azucares and Hibiscus Tacos. I love that book, by the way. We didn't even have a chance to talk about it. A comic book. The comic book is VENDAVAL. No?
VENDAVAL.
And that means like this big wind thing, right?
It's like a certain wind that happens somewhere on the coast of Africa, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Perdón?
And
Veracruz.
Entonces fuerte. Okay. All right. And a short story collection, Flesh to Bone, this incredible book, which won the Premio Aztlán. ire'ne is the recipient of the 2021 Texas Institute of Letters, the Shrake Award for Best Short Nonfiction, and the 2021 Tasajillo Writers Grant, a 2017 NALAC Fund for the Arts Grant, and the final Alfredo Cisneros del Moral Award. And lastly, the Fiction Finalist for, that's a rojo, means a room of her own. 2013 Gift of Freedom Award. Her second short story collection, The Light of Your Body, which is a beautiful text I just began reading, will be published by Arte Publico Press in fall 2025. Are you tired?
No, no, I'm just getting started. I was telling friends of mine, I've got like 4 books to work on this year.
I'm excited for you. That's great. More to come. Amanda, she's going to keep you busy, girl. That's all I know. All right. Amanda Ellis is an associate professor of English at the University of Houston, where she teaches courses on Mexican-American literature and American literature. She is a Black and Chicanx first-generation scholar interested in various forms of humanistic inquiry. And her book, Letras y Limpias, Decolonial Medicine and Holistic Healing in Mexican-American Literature, was published by the University of Arizona Press and it theorizes the significance of the curandera figure and folk healing in Mexican-American lit, right? So gracias, Amanda, for coming. Thank you, everybody out there. Thank you guys over there. I look forward to this conversation. There's an interesting one because we really are doing this dance between the critical and creative, and as I said, I find them completely just a whole in itself. And partly, we're going to talk a lot about what it is to have that sense of whole, right? I think that Amanda's been talking about this a lot. And so I thought we could maybe just start out with both of you reading. And Amanda, if you would like to read from your book. And I have to say before you do, it's not easy to be an academic and to try to be pleasurable when you're reading, to have a pleasurable moment with reading. But you do, I told you this before, I really recommend the book because there is a way in which she has such eloquence in her writing. The research is off the hook. You should be tired. And the way that she does integrate other writers never feels awkward. They're absolutely, it's a hard thing to do, to integrate your references in such a beautiful way. I enjoyed the book. And so go for it.
So I figured I should begin with the breath because the breath reminds us that we continue to be. And so I'll just read a little bit from the preface. I'm gratefully aware of what is afforded by my body. I inventory every breath and I listen to my body in this stillness of social isolation that is both restrictiveness and refuge. The tension of isolation compromises and recalibrates my relationship to my breath. I recall that for some, quote, this continual breathing in and out is the form of existence most proper to contemplation, end quote. I begin with the breath, with what Christina Sharp calls, quote, the necessity of the breath, end quote. For that is our beginning and our end. And with each breath, I grieve the enormous compounded histories of loss, even as I think of the effects of growing racialized violence in an already ailing body politic. I enter stillness through the seismic shift of non-negotiable, compulsory surrender. I return to what I know to be sound and true. To get through this season, I must grieve and enter the healing space of stillness and deep listening. Letras y Limpias, decolonial medicine and holistic healing in Mexican American literature is guided by my profound love, admiration, and respect for all curanderas and curanderos broadly defined. I understand healers as including doulas, mothers, activists, teachers, artists, religious leaders, and everyday lay people who heal and who thereby leave spaces and people better than they were before. My earliest recognition of a curandera was mediated through the love I encountered as a child. My maternal grandmother, born in Perivan, Michoacan, had buena mano, a good hand, and was sought out for therapeutic healing as a sobadora. Before retiring, she worked as a hotel housekeeper her whole life in Tasco del Arcon, Guerrero. She did not study medicine because she did not have the opportunity to pursue formal schooling. She was not una doctora facultada, a formally trained physician. She intrigued me, an American child accustomed to healing and care work taking place only in a clinical setting at the hands of a licensed, formally trained, or formally educated professionals. My abuelita, who was known as Doña Angelita, was a single mother in the 1950s. She was a hardcore Catholic who prayed in her sleep, literally. She fed her neighbors, cared for her pet dove, carried herself with humility, kept an impressive garden, and treated herself and all others with love. She lived a full life in Mexico, one composed of communal care work and a lifelong commitment to spiritual ritual. In her 60s, she was diagnosed with diabetes, and this meant countless visits to the Seguro Social building. She treated her illness by supplementing biomedical care and a regimen of pharmaceuticals with an adherence to what Luz Calvo and Catriona Rueda Esquivel, descansa en paz, referred to as a, quote, decolonized diet. She treated her diabetes with prayer and laughter, compassion, homemade nopal smoothies, and the very plantita she grew on her terraza garden. She self-healed through the verdolagas, guasontles, nopales, and other raw fruits and vegetables within her reach. She taught me the importance of using plants, prayer, fire, and water to maintain sacred spaces for healing in one's home. Letras y Limpias honors her and all curanderas who set out to undertake healing work and who pass on their ancestral knowledge of healing. Those who can close read the obscured sources of pain and chronic illness, who understand that bodies are differentially embedded in time and space, and are therefore marked by historical wounds, and who recognize that people are radically connected to all living things on this earth, are the ones who guide my close readings here. By honoring the sacred part of these connections, the figure of the curandera, who surfaces across our letras, offers us ways to heal that have nothing to do with co-pays or refusing care because of pre-existing conditions, and everything to do with honoring the beauty and complexity of all mind, body, spirits. For me, the sources of affection that guide this study are all who operate as embodied sources of love, who preserve the ancestral knowledge forms imagined by and for the production of feminist women of color consciousness, and who show up in the fullness of their intersectionality. Theirs is the power that is being made legible through the figures who shift over time and across genres. And their practices are not only aestheticized in written works, but also exist in the world beyond the text. These practices can still be inherited, conserved, and refashioned to produce a more bearable world by challenging us to think differently about healing and embodiment. This is a force that differentially rises from below. This love is the epistemic seedbed underlying the critical modalities of decolonial medicine, which I theorize through the figure of the curandera across the Mexican-American literary imagination.
Beautiful, thank you, thank you. I think when I first read that, I wrote you and I said, that's the book I want. Yeah. And I know you can do it. It's really beautiful. Thank you for that. You know, we need to hear it. My friend, would you like to read?
So,
Comments?
so Amanda, it's interesting to me how beautiful that was, because it made me think of how for many, many years, I wished that I wrote more beautiful poetry. You know, more beautiful images, more beautiful sounds. But I think what was given to me to write in poetry is often not beautiful. And so it's been important to, I think more important, I think I've been a poet trying to write truth more than beauty, or sometimes truth at the cost of beauty. So it's interesting because I'm going to read a poem that I feel like it's not as beautiful as what you just read.
Oh.
But it's true. So that's why I offer it. This is the title poem to Blood Sugar Canto. This is what they will not tell you, and this is what you must know. If you hear nothing else I say, hear this. You cannot live in fear. You cannot heal in fear. Fear will never make you stronger. Fear is the language many doctors speak. They'll say this is going to kill you. Your organs are being bathed in acid, amputation, dialysis, coma, death. And when the body does not obey, as the doctor demands, more pills, more insulin, more syringes, more often. And it will wear on you the constant battle of necessity versus necessity, a box of syringes versus gas money, the price of sufficient insulin against the cost of groceries, testing strips and lancets versus the light bill, the cost of one healthy meal versus the cost of 3 fast food meals, another copay and another copay versus the cost of not seeing the doctor. They will say there are no choices, but there are always choices, though the choices we make out of fear are not choices. Fear is a prison. Fear is worse than the disease. Fear takes everything. Some will say, this is war, war raging within us, blood turned against itself, our bodies falling in battle, the enemy everywhere within and without. But the word war turns us against ourselves, and the word disease renders us victims, and the war is unending, and a war always claims casualties. In a war, there is no room for dreaming oneself well. And the first part of the dream is learning to listen to your body and to your blood. It is not as simple as eat this, not that, eat that, not this, take this, not that, take that, not this, do this, not that, do that, not this. You learn to listen until you are the one writing the song, and the daily challenges are the discordant notes you must work into the score, making something more beautiful than what there was before. Not planned, not wanted, but more powerful because it is truth. But the music will not come if you are afraid. Music, like most things in life, enters in only one of two ways, el amor o el dolor, through love or through pain. I know no one said we were worthy of love. No one said we were precious or that our lives were gifts. No one said, let us learn to love ourselves, heal ourselves, care for ourselves, care for each other, teach each other how to begin with this essential task of loving ourselves. I will begin here with these words, learning love one utterance at a time. I will not live in fear. I will make song.
Beauty? Beauty?
Beautiful and true.
Truth is beauty.
Sometimes,
Beauty is truth.
sometimes it's pain. But but there's bad pain and there's good pain. And avoidance of all pain is a problem. Sometimes you gotta experience it. You wanted two pieces. I'm gonna read the last poem I wrote for this collection. Because the whole collection was about processing through fear. But I realized that I needed to write a poem about shame. And I was so glad I wrote this poem. A reader wrote me a couple years after it came out and said that she realized that her mother hadn't died of diabetes. Mother had died of shame because she had stopped asking for help and she had stopped trying and she had stopped fighting with doctors and she'd stopped out of shame. So it's called A Guzzle in Pieces because I keep saying I can't follow rules. And so I like parts of it and then I needed to break the rules. So that's why it's a guzzle in pieces. Shame, a guzzle in pieces. A body should have its wildness. Yes, this your body. Yes, this body. Yes, your body. Who are they to name your body? My body, a shame body. Shame my weight, shame your weight. Shame how I look, shame how you look. Shame my disease, shame my story. Say we have made ourselves sick. We keep ourselves sick. What is the blame body? Would it be easier if my body did not exist, if your body did not exist, if all our diabetic bodies did not exist? Oh, we will not blame my body, blame our bodies. When my body has only done everything it could to survive, my body is a flame body, alive with fire, fire pulsing inside, shouting, live, live, live. My story, which is only triumphant because I am still here. Neither pain nor shame will erase me or silence me. There are poems here, too, here, in the places where all maps end. Your body has survived. My body has survived. I will not be ashamed of surviving.
Yes. I think there's in reading both several of your own texts and then reading Amanda's work, we keep coming onto this thing about the susto that you described, Amanda, in your work, right? And it's interesting because I remember earlier today you're saying that about how what motivates your work oftentimes is coraje, right? And so really, and I thought to myself, and in the because we're talking about curanderismo, or your book is talking about this, Amanda, you bring up the question of susto. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because also we want to get to the place of also this whole issue about what are the origins of all this susto, right? And so it's also when you're talking about decolonial medicine, right? So what's the origins of susto, shame, all of this. And one healthy response, what is a healthy response to susto, right? That the question comes up for me. And so anyway, I want you to talk a little bit more about how you do that in the book.
Yes, I'll definitely go there, but I do want to assert that I teach your collection, ire'ne, and I think I've been thinking through the collection, and it is fundamentally equal parts truthful and beautiful. So like, no lo puedes negar. It's beautiful.
You don't get to do
So yeah, for me, if I can go to the book, there's a short section that I write, quote, I see ire'ne's work as a remedio, right? I see ire'ne's work as as part of a larger tradition of writers who are reckoning with what it means to have the unmooring of one's spirit or soul from the body and from the mind. And it's in her poetic intervention, the cautionary warning over and again is not unregulated glucose. It's not like the metabolic disorder itself, right? And she points our attention, right? The poetry points our attention to fear and its all-consuming and debilitating effects, right? So in the work I write, quote, the present global neoliberal economy breeds illness. The extreme poverty and structural inequality now recognized as the hallmarks of globalization make the World Health Organization's assertion that 450 million people globally already have a mental health issue unsurprising. For this reason, it is important now more than ever to think about the ways in which curanderismo and spiritual activism continue to be aestheticized in Xicana literature, especially the new ways in which border artists, just like ire'ne, insist upon fashioning stories and poems that are fundamentally structured around announcing the importance of curanderismo as a means to aid us in our decolonial processes of self-healing. Ansaldúa reminds us, quote, because we use metaphors as well as hierbitas or curing stones to effect changes, we follow in the tradition of the shaman. Like the shaman, we transmit information from our consciousness to the physical body of another. If we are lucky, we create like the shaman images that induce altered states of consciousness conducive to healing. From our own and our people's experiences, we will try to create images and metaphors that will give us a handle on the numinous, a handle on the faculty for self-healing, one that may cure the depressed spirit, the frightened soul, end quote. And so I see ire'ne's poetry doing this, dislodging us from the tentacular grip, right, of fear in this moment where neoliberalism produces fear in us and is producing harm. And I assert here that healing transformations will remain at the forefront of Xicana feminist theory and at the forefront of the narratives and poetry we call our own, inflected by the diversity of Xicana experience. These stories, these narratives matter. They matter now more than ever because the rapacious US economy is increasingly globalizing privatized trade and therefore globalizing susto. Here, our understanding of illness and of healing must shift to recognize the way larger forces make us structurally vulnerable to illness and trauma. And the quasi-divine status granted by default to the market in the era of globalization threatens all life on the planet. And so I really think that in Blood Sugar Canto, there's these explicit and very beautiful moments where ire'ne cautions us to think about the full ramifications of susto. And she's echoing for us like what our elders cautioned for us too, right? As part of like these illness narratives, right? As part of our own ancestral and traditional ways that we explain diabetes, susto rears its head. It's not just about a metabolic disorder that's happening on the inside of us, right? So I thank you for the beauty and for the truth, ire'ne.
Well, to give a very physical body level example. So I end up talking to a lot of people after they get a diabetes diagnosis or they're pre-diabetic or anything like that. And, you know, at this point, I have been insulin dependent for 17 years. And one of the things that, you know, that people are told so much about what you should eat and what meds you should take and whatever else. And I find it insane that two of the simplest things that people can do, three of the simplest things that people can do to help with their blood sugar levels is to learn to eat small meals throughout the day, to sleep, and to, you know, people always say to manage your stress, but really stress in the body, the simple way to understand it is stress in the body is sugar in the body.
Yeah.
The same way that susto, when you have a sudden thing that happens, whether it's something that frightens you or a trauma or a deep blow, Western medicine doesn't recognize the effect that something like that can have on your body. And we're not even going into like generational trauma or what's passed down. It's even in your own life. All of that disrupts the balances in your body. And the way that I think that I see it, you know, manifesting, or the way that I see it working through curanderismo is that it is, okay, so maybe this is more me than curanderismo, but I feel, yeah, but I'm the poet that's gonna talk about this, is that I think what is missing in our understanding in Western medicine and so-called rational thought, is that we are not putting the spirit first. We are putting the body first. And to me, that's as if we were saying, we as people are like vehicles that can go in and get a battery changed out or a new belt and you're good to go. And that's not the way it is. We are people. And that's why I liked in the book, Amanda, that you stressed mind, body, spirit at every single point, because it is all of that. And because of the fact that we have been so deprived of the acknowledgement of the spirit, I think that's why part of what the mandate is for spiritual activism, for art, for plática, for everything, is that to balance the things, we've got to put spirit first, because we have no concept of it. You know, we have concept of body, we have concept of mind, but we don't have concept of spirit, and we especially do not have concept of the three interlinked.
I just, you know, I have to jump here and take the opportunity to thank you that you don't shortchange us. I'm thinking of the poem in the collection, Dieta Indígena, and how, like, on the one hand, you like de-link us from those conversations about like discipline or moderation or morality, right? That it just all boils down to making the right food choices, right? But you don't necessarily de-link us from having the conversation about nutrition. You have your readers and the readers of your poetry pivot to think about hyper-industrialization, right? And how nutrition itself is degraded. And you know, there's lines in the poem where you're like, what if we ate like our ancestors ate, right? Which again, we cannot have these conversations about that it's just simply a matter of food choice when we're thinking about large multinational companies that hold patents and biotechnology firms that hold patents on our corn and you know the changes in the ways that we in our ancestral food pathways and what we can even access as a result of neoliberalism. And so I thank you for that. It's not that you're shifting, it's not that you won't talk about this, it's that you're shifting our attention on the very things that hurt our spirits. They hurt our bodies and they hurt our minds.
And so you're looking at the technical, the scientific, the all of that.
Yeah.
But spiritually, the reason that I end up talking in the poem about, are we eating what is dead, or are we eating what is alive? And if you are feeding your spirit, you cannot feed your spirit with something that is dead. If you're looking at these genetically modified seeds that don't bear seed, you're eating death. If you're eating animals that are not, like things that have not been alive, or things that have been poisoned or shaped or deformed or misformed, you are not eating what is alive. You are not eating what there was before. There's no way to eat what your ancestors ate, because even the foods have been perverted and poisoned and given to you in a dead form.
Yeah.
Your spirit can't eat that.
Yeah. You tell us born artificial, born dead. Like, this is where the critic in me, like I'm haunted by particular verses, ire'ne. I think the hope in the collection is in the places where, you know, we must listen to you sing. We must listen to you sing past the fear. We must listen to you, I argue, enact that limpia by calling us back to ourselves, right? The spiritual component for me in the collection is that you don't let us exit the collection hopelessly, right? You let us exit the collection with a kind of mandate that we must become the curanderas, that we are called to start with that work first, right? That we're kind of in many ways announcing that, yes, we still have the curanderas who serve in our communities in our presence, but that tenemos un mandato, right? Like we have a mandate and a charge within ourselves, right? To call ourselves back from the things that harm us.
Yeah, to call ourselves back, to heal ourselves. And for me, I think, I mean, the whole reason the book is about Sugar Canto is I felt that song was the best way to capture what I meant by that. Because it isn't, especially I think in the US and probably in most of the world, when we think about song, we think about something that is marketed, something that is commercialized, something you buy, something you enjoy, something you party with. It isn't, we've lost the, not so much, well, so we've lost some of the way that song informs and shapes community. We've lost some, we've lost a lot of what we mean as far as song when it comes to invoking ceremony. We've forgotten what it means when you pass songs down through generations. I mean, this like, I love really old conjunto music, really old ranchera music, really, I love a lot of things, but I don't love them because my parents love them or because my grandparents love them. I love them because I love them. And the fact that we date things in such a way that we can't love something, when is any art ever dead?
Right.
Art continues to live. So we can love things because we love them. And so, and we can love, we can create, we're also always in that process of creating art. So if we're always creating story and we're always creating song and we're always creating art, then why not think, or why not shape the creation of those things in ways that do not rely on their marketing, on their being commercialized, on their ability to be sold, on their ability to be part of this, as you were saying, the neoliberal economy. No, it's not about, you know, the way that music is seen a lot, that it's shipping, like American music, that it is shaping culture around the world and robbing the rest of the world from their culture. It's music and art does not have to be this colonizing enterprise.
Well, I think what you've done, Amanda, in your book is that by beginning way from the beginning with the first American literature, when you're looking at that first text, which I want you to talk about, but what impressed me the most, but also what is song, what is canto, right? So the original Mesoamerican works were sung, they were performed, they were painted. It is all of the art forms all in the codice. No, that's the original, and that is our American literature. And I'm never gonna, I talked about this before, but I always remember being told that discovery that since we're here in the United States and all of our nation state identities, like I should be studying, London, right? The works of the English, right? And here you're in English class, but really the truth of the matter is that's ours. That's our original American literature. And so that's what I'm thinking
Which
about with
was
song.
medicine and art and song
Yes.
all together.
So talk about that, isn't it? That your discussion right in the first chapter is about that one book, right?
Yes.
And of the history of it. And what I want to say before you do is that it made me feel so angry, that it took so long to come back to us. And also you think about all the knowledge that has been lost over all this time that now everybody's scratching to try to get it back, and selling it, right? As appropriating it as opposed to what was originally right there. So please, I would love to hear about it.
I want to talk about that, but I just have to say, ire'ne, I think I just want to say, like, especially for this moment, song is important because what it does is that it puts it asserts, number one, that the Xicana's voice, the Xicana's expression is worthy of attention. The Xicana's body, right? And that there's like this incredible courage. There's nothing more courageous than cantando or echando grito, right? Like it is this bold, creative like act, right? And I would say that it has this potential to bring us into this beautiful kind of balance and harmony in and through that modality of listening, because we don't listen. We're losing our capacity to listen to one another. And so, song, it's not lost on me that that sensoria and auditory processing, where our bodies physically house, like how we mediate and modulate our sense of balance and harmony and spatially orient ourselves is in our ear. That's where the vestibular, like where the balance is. And I feel like beyond just like the literal, right? Figuratively, that to assert that your song is worthy of listening to is it puts us in this space of like honoring. It's a heart posture, right? A relational exchange that it assumes that one is willing to make sense of another's expression, right? Of another's creative power, and to honor the connection between two people, both whether it's like person singing, an audience member, storyteller, and listener. It divorces some of the very so I'm just noticing right now that we feel it's very binary. It's very us, them, right? And
I'm gonna interrupt you. The thing too, though, that you haven't said yet, is that when a person sings and another one listens, I think song is probably the most direct way that people end up sharing emotions.
yes, touching.
And I'm not sure that that happens as immediately in any other form. Because, I mean, you hear a sad song, you feel sad. And in what other way, other than through that sense of hearing, do we transfer energy? Do we transfer emotion so immediately?
Yes, the poet, I would say artists understand this, right? And for me, where it slips into limpia, right? If I'm saying neoliberalismo nos tiene asustados, right? If I'm saying susto is everywhere, then to hear a Chicana feminist song then is ultimately for me like this reminder that we are vitally, crucially, magnificently, interdependently entangled, right? That your body is integral to my body, that it's touching me, right? That the sound in the song touches me. Sorry, I went off there on song, but I just can't move beyond it. But let me jump to what you were saying, Cherríe, about the Códice de la Cruz Badiano, right? I had a very, very excellent teacher, my mentor, Jose Aranda. As much as I wanted to only stay in the post-contemporary Chicanx works, he was the one that was like, what would you do with this codex? Like, how would you read this codex? How can we think about this codex? And I'm really thankful that he took me back to this moment in the 16th century that is just kind of marvelous, right? To think that only a handful of decades after colonial contact, right? The apocalyptic change of like, European contact in Las Americas, right? That not even a handful of decades later, that there are thinkers already there at El Colegio de Santa Cruz in Tlatelolco, learning Latin, like learning to translate Nahuatl to Latin, learning Spanish, and penning their own herbal, right? It's very difficult to grasp from a contemporary moment, right? And of course,
I have that one quote about from that very period of time, if I can interrupt you for a second. In 1555, 3 years after Códices was written, and just 19 years after its founding, the Colegio de la Santa Cruz was shut down when the Council of Churches in Mexico decreed that Indians, mestizos, and Blacks were not fit to attend seminary, and as a result, barred the school from ordaining students into priesthood that year. And that was the very moment you're describing. And it's interesting that it's indio, black, mestizo.
oh yeah,
Estamos ahora, la misma cosa, ¿no? And
still here.
yeah,
We're still here, right? And for me, you know, the thing that's riveting is like, of course we had it down in 2 decades. Like, of course we mastered the form, right? It's the mastery of form and deformation of mastery, right? Here we are. Okay, how do you want it to look? What do you want? And so then it becomes very difficult to understand this text. And there was grief for me too, Cherríe, because, you know, the materia medica that you are taught to understand as the early text, right? One does not think of the Badianis manuscript, right? One thinks of these other works. And here we are with this deeply important hemispheric moment where sign carriers and technologies of writing are shifting. And we have these figures here that are writing alphabetically in a moment where that is lorded over people about like an evolutionary end, where folks are, oh, you don't write with the alphabet, you're barbarous, right? Not even a few decades later, they're doing it and still like mastering the form, but then deforming it by bringing in glyphs. So for folks who don't know that Codice in particular, like this manuscript is an herbal, and it details just healing practices of the 16th century. And it is a painted book. It's a beautiful, tiny book. And it's written by a Latinist and a native physician from the 16th century. And the book is very beautiful, not because I was trying to like locate some beginning, some neat beginning, because I don't think that is possible, right? But it's important to put it here alongside works like ire'ne's, and alongside Viramontes and Manuel Muñoz and Anaya and Paredes, and even your work, Cherríe, because it is this place where I can assert that, like, no, we self-healed from the beginning. We self-healed before. We had practices, we had traditions, we had rights. And even in the moment of, you know, the commissioning of this manuscript, we found ways to include our own writing systems, right? Because there was glyphic writing. And, you know, Jose really pushed me to think about that. Like, why would they put glyphs in it? You know, they're not supposed to be writing using those. They're supposed to be using the alphabet, right?
I think that what kind of, you know, I said again, I really appreciate that that's where you started. That's the first chapter. So all the rest of where you're going with the book eventually ends up being, I think it's such a incredibly moving critique of decolonization. I mean, of colonization, and also about neoliberalism now. All the stuff that's going on in our world now. Your book is more timely than ever, right? I mean, it's just, but I think in seeing that you started with that text, it gives you a feeling about what could have been, right? How things could have been different. But it also reaffirmed for me, and I hate to say, like, we were talking about Las Maestras Center for Xicana Indígena art and social art, thought, and social praxis. And those things where you're putting them together, where, you know, like spirit, mind, and body, you have them, you make no separation in those words. It's one big word like that. I really appreciated that. And in that sense, it's like, still art te cura, no? If we, for years, we've been saying art cura. And so this is no news to any of us, right? But
Yes.
for some reason, it seems to that we keep getting separated further and further from that understanding. And I say here in academia, it's very difficult because the acknowledgement that art is criticism
Mhm,
is not being acknowledged.
mhm.
And there's ways, I'm not sure if I have a feeling this may be our last days of Las Maestras soon, right? And I think partly that's the problem. I think that there really is, it's really hard to justify it when you're talking about a corporate institution, right? You're talking about the corporatization, which takes you back to also capital. You
Well,
know,
it's not just justified. It's that that system is directly in opposition to an understanding and a support of arte being something que cura, of
You're
cultura being something que cura. I mean, why else are we seeing the attacks that we're seeing on arts and on cultural studies and on race and
no
ethnic studies?
accident. It's
It is not an
accident.
accident. It is in direct opposition to the corporate and to the economy and to what people are wanting. And I think one thing I wanted to respond to, Amanda, and what you said is that, okay, I like to tell very strange stories, to compare things. You were talking about how angry you felt and the betrayal and the sense of loss, to the fact that you didn't know that this códice existed and that it was something that people are not aware of. I feel the same way about tamales. Because we always get into these huge debates about you shouldn't have your tamales with ketchup. You should only have them with salsa. You should only have them with a whatever of Chile. I am like, I do not care how people eat their tamales. Cut them up in pieces, put mustard, put them on a stick. I don't care. The fact that we are still eating and loving tamales 500 years later
It says a lot.
is what is important to me.
Yes, yes,
Like, to me, to see that there was this códice,
yes,
that they were rebeldes back then, and including glyphic writing, it makes me, it gives me heart.
yes,
It
yes.
reassures me we will survive whatever the hell is happening right now, and we will go on to flourish.
And it won't be because of academia, I'll say that.
It won't be because of that, it won't be because of capitalism, it won't be because of whatever, but it's because that is what we do.
Yes, yes,
Endure and we survive, and we have these examples from the past to know that we have survived before and we will again, and we are now.
But you
yes,
know, why, I mean, I think as artists and writers, I think that's why, when we talk about, I more often than say curanderismo, I just talk about conciencia, you know?
Yeah.
And how do you come to consciousness? And the only way I know how one comes to consciousness is they get agitated.
yes,
So my attraction to your work, and that's why I think it's beautiful, is that there's just such agitation in it. There's such conflict. There's like, you see the person trying, what does this wound make me know? Not, oh, I don't want that. What does this wound make me know about myself, about you, about the world?
And the fact that that wound should give you coraje.
yes,
And so,
you
and
didn't deserve it.
and so many people have been socialized or taught or shamed out of
Yes.
having their justified coraje.
See,
If you are bullied, you are hurt, you are wounded, you are oppressed, you are deprived, you should have coraje
mhm,
out of a basic sense of justice and of what is fair in the world.
well, I think, and that's what that's what I'm seeing now at my age. That's what you look to the youth to more than anything else, because they're just pissed off, you know, and that energy has to be there like that, or nothing gets changed.
Yeah.
You know, and you had said earlier when we were talking one of the other times about that's what I was saying, that your response, it's to me, you said, well, every time I get mad, I write something new. I get a new poem, you know. And so what is that? I mean, that we have to have, I find that it's, for me, different. And we're talking also, I think about the body, that the body is a site of knowledge,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, what it is, and when I'm teaching in my classes, I ask my students, where do you feel discomfort? If you're just sitting in the room right now, right? They know this, because some of them, but you know, where do you feel discomfort? And you're starting to write, and something comes up and you go, oh.
yeah,
And that's exactly where you want to go, right over there, right? It's like, and so conciencia, the thing that I feel more committed to around art practice, and we've done this anyway for 40, 50 years, right? Is it changes minds.
Well, and I forget who wrote that. It was an interesting little essay that I read where somebody said that the trauma of students going into Chicano studies, the first time they take Chicano studies, that's for a lot of them when they first hear all of the history.
Yeah.
And what does it do? It pisses you off. And why does it piss you off? Because you see that something was done that was not, it was injustice.
Yeah.
And why do you feel this anger with injustice, or why do you feel that discomfort? Why do you feel that anger?
And also you say, why didn't I know? You know,
Right.
why didn't I know?
But you see, but what all of that, and this is the part that people don't understand, or don't acknowledge, all of that, you feel angry when you are wounded, you feel angry when you hear the history of the people, because why? Because you love yourself and because you love your people.
Yeah.
Injustice done to you, and injustice done to your family, and injustice done to your community, and injustice done in history. You get angry because you love those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
That brings, I mean, so the other part that you bring up a lot, and it's very evident in your work, and you write about this directly, is that when you're talking, that it's not about individualism, right? So all the things that counter, you know, everything that capital is about, which is individualism, progressive plot lines, you know, everything's like future, that what you're describing is a sense about we, always about we, and also about the interrelation of all of this, right? And I think you write a lot about the interrelationality, and that basically being, when we're talking about indigenous thought, that is kind of a fundamental aspect of it, that all of this is connected.
Because the same way that mind, body, spirit, the way Amanda writes it, is one word.
Right.
Yeah.
We are not mind, body, spirits on our own.
No.
We are
No.
body, spirit, community, family, relations,
Yes.
memories, influences, and impacts, all at the same time. And that, I mean, and I love to be by myself, but I know I am always being shaped and influenced by what I read and what I hear and what I listen to and what I think about and who I remember and who has been in my life and people that I don't even know yet that are going to be in my life. All of these things are connected. And this Western thought that we are individuals doesn't work when it comes to economy. It doesn't work when you think of the world. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work when we're thinking of healing. You know, I would say, when Cherríe, when you say, no, we have to deal with what surges up, we have to deal with shadow, we have to actually write the shadow, we have to think about it so that conciencia could happen. There's this place from, I think it's here from Inside the First World, one of your essays, Cherríe, where you say, it's a question, you say, how do you teach a child a politic where there's no facile us and them, where the us who are supposed to be the protectors, you say, are the same them who brought the bombs down on the soil, right? So it's especially in this political moment, right? So it's always a going back. It's always a going back. I'm always going back to earlier readings and listening to Xicanas at every stage saying it's not as easy as us and them. It's not as easy to say it's just them, it's their issue. No, I feel like Xicanas are doing this healing work and have been leading by first saying, you know, and this is Ansaldúa too, right? Like, let's look at the wound. Let's look at how we are implicated in this wound. Let's look how we are called to heal this wound, right? And it's very easy to accept this nasty, this is exactly what the state does, right? The state says, oh, those lives are not biopolitically worthy. Those lives don't have traditions. Those lives don't think. Those lives don't matter. And then the state can do whatever it wants with it, right? With them, with those communities. And what Chicana feminist writers are doing, and I think always asserting, is like, no, this radical interconnectedness, this radical sense of community. We're beholden to community. We're beholden to remembering. And as much as I wanted to just stay in the present, I had to reach back. I keep reaching back to your works too, Cherríe.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I think you're a little more optimistic than I am. saying that honestly about Chicana letters, you know, and not just Chicana, Latino letters, you know. I think that as time has gone on, you know, this is why I find your work very exceptional on a certain level. Because I feel like there's no sale in it. There's no sale, there's no careerism in it. And I do feel like, you know, it's hard to be a writer outside of academia, right? I mean, you know, and so we have a lot of writers in academia or not, but I do not see a radical agenda coming from Chicana letters. I forgive me, I don't see it, right? And what I'm saying is that you have to find it, you have to pick out. That's what teaching is about.
Yeah.
I see it in my students. I say, oh, I don't want to lose them.
Yeah.
Lose them, right? Because there is of course, the condition that we are in the world now, we know this, you know, but I feel like, generally speaking, the way, for one thing, I feel that Mexicanos, Latinos in this country are virtually invisible still in the popular media and all this stuff, right? There's always some exceptions to that, but the only time they pay attention to us has to do with in denigrating, you know, us as immigrantes and this or that. We all know, I'm not gonna tell you something we already know. But the point of it is that Border Susto's alive and well, more alive and well now than it's been. You keep thinking it's never gonna get this worse, and it keeps getting worse, and it keeps getting worse. Now it's completely structural, you know, that is allowable. And if you think we're talking about Border Susto from 500 years of, you know, colonialism, well, what about Border Susto yesterday, you know? And so yes, I'm thinking, what are we supposed to be writing? What are art supposed to be saying? And largely, I feel like it's hesitant and polite and pretty, you know, and I know there's a lot of exceptions to this, so please, nobody, all you people out there, don't take it personally. But what I'm saying, as a movement, that we are not a movement of writers and artists and thinkers yet. We are not, we were, you know, and a lot of things got appropriated, integrated. Integration is a terrible word. It's, you know, what did integration do for the Harlem? Let me just figure this out, because I lose it when I forget. Okay. You know, so it's like, so one has to be constantly looking for the agitation. Your work agitates me. That's why I like it. I didn't go, oh, this is lovely. No, it agitated me. So that's what we need to be doing. That's what we need to be reading. That's what we need to be asking of artists. This is our job. When you're talking about being, you know, like disobedient, yeah, this is rebel thinking, you know, in that sense. Okay, now let you go.
I was gonna say that it not just appropriated and marketed, but I feel in some ways like the Xicana or the Xicana revolutionary literary project just got abandoned and kind of fell by the wayside.
I hear you. Yeah.
So Amanda, I would agree with Cherríe that you do sound very optimistic, and what you are saying, I love that you sound optimistic, because somebody needs to be putting that optimistic step forward, that optimistic view forward of saying, this is what we need, this is what is partially happening, and we need more of it. So we do need the optimistic.
Absolutely.
But I think that's why I have felt so alone in all the time that I have been writing. I remember, in fact, I was just telling Cherríe yesterday about how in my first writing workshop, I felt super attacked because I was not writing stories like the other Chicanas in this workshop were writing. It was completely opposed to what they were writing. And I was at a reading recently, and I asked the two writers that were presenting, what's happening? What do you feel is happening with the Xicana, and I use those words exactly, the Xicana Revolutionary Literary Project. One of the writers completely sidestepped the whole question and started talking about how glad she was of how many Latinas were being published. I said, you know, we somewhere we fell into this idea that representation is everything, and that as long as you have a Spanish surname or a brown face, that is all we need as far as revolution, that is all we need to change things or transform things. My problem with a lot, specifically my problem, I don't know, it might also be Cherríe's problem, but my specific problem with a lot of Xicana and Latina, especially Xicana and Latina writing, is that it is it feeds into what the dominant society wants to think and believe about Chicanas and Latinas. This powerlessness, this hopelessness, this voicelessness, I feel like it keeps reinscribing things the way they are and doesn't offer transformation, doesn't offer a new vision, doesn't offer a way to escape what is present. And at its worst, what it does is it gives the dominant society these tragic stories of these figures that are never going to really want to or never be able to transform themselves, their families, their communities, their society.
Or, right?
Mm.
Or it has some of these, I've got a particular look at the younger literature, the literature that's really like 20-something-year-old, coming out. Or it's like getting part of the American dream and where success stories and all of that. I think the real,
And difference falls away. It doesn't matter
it
that
doesn't
you're brown.
matter.
It doesn't matter.
But I think like the real issue is, and I feel I've always been an outlier.
Mm.
I know I am.
But well, I'm sorry, there's something you said very important though, that I don't think we've given
One
enough
thing?
emphasis. One thing right now that I'm gonna talk about right now
Okay,
is that you said Chicana indígena.
right.
And we were talking the other day about how much within Chicana Latina circles, people are denying the indigenous and the African
Definitely.
parts of their
That's what we're
ancestry.
talking about.
And so a lot of, I think, of what we see happening in this current literature or the literature that we're talking about that is not advancing the revolutionary project is written by people whose identities are not claiming the indigenous and the African.
But even if they do, it's so superficial. This is what I'm saying is that.
Well, not for marketing purposes, but like
Yeah,
for,
no,
like
for
in
the
the
real
actual,
deal,
yeah.
yeah. And
Well-
so, absolutely, because the thing is that the whole point of this conversation from the day, from the very beginning, you're talking about decolonial medicine, right? I mean, you're talking about, so how do we get well? And you were talking about writing a ceremony. I remember we had a really good conversation and I really related to that. I felt like when I sit down, I'm a mess sometimes when I sit down to write. My family will tell you that. And but the thing is that the ceremonial part of it, is like, it's almost like if you, as you know, in order to get well, you got let out, right? That's part of ceremony, right? You have to get really, really sick to get well. Right, and let me finish my thought. You cannot go.
No, I'm taking a note. I'm taking a mental note. Go ahead.
It's just like that's the way my. So now I forgot. Okay, so so if right, so partly no, I forgot what it was. It's all right.
You reminded me of something Denise Chavez said recently. Because she was reading from her new, was it The Street of Too Many Stories?
Yeah, maybe.
And it's not in the book, but it's what she said about the book.
Yeah.
And I wish I had it written down. But she said something about intention. And so our Chicanas, our Latinas, are we sitting down with the intention of creating medicine? Are we sitting down with the intention of invoking ceremony?
Because they can't do it. They can't do it. I mean, and this is the trouble, is that they can't do it unless they suffer. And I know that they hate when I say that.
Yeah.
They hate it. They just, and I say, and I remember a young woman saying to me, we worked our whole lives not to suffer. Who are you to say that we're going to? I said, oh girl, you're not understanding. That we, each of us, regardless of, we all have stories, right? And so when you're talking about and because we're Mexicana, then that pushes our buttons because, oh, Mexicans suffer, oh, we have to eat and all this, right? But that's a overlay. I mean, the real deal is that the writing process is ceremonial about getting well. And that is what you were saying, Amanda, and, even back to Ruby and Naya, I mean, it's like it's sexism and everything else. But still so the curandera, and you call her a poet curandera, because what she suffers to write it cures me when I'm reading it. And that's all I care about. I care about them, my students, and if they are not doing that, I am not interested. But I will hold their hand, I will give them guidance, and I will ask them, what is your intention? Which is what, Denise was just saying. What is your intention? And I think that notion of why we're even writing, gets very, obscure.
But you just said you care.
Yes.
I don't understand. The way I learned it is life is pain. Life is suffering. Inevitably it is. You get hurt, somebody you love, you
Even the
lose somebody you
Buddhists
love,
know that.
whatever it is, life is suffering, life is suffering. So how do you not suffer unless you don't care?
Exactly.
Unless you become a person, you do not care about yourself and
Absolutely.
yourself,
Absolutely.
your family, your community, if you don't care about the stranger on the street, if you don't care, that's the only way I can figure that you wouldn't suffer. You're finding a way to disconnect yourself so much from your spirit, mind, body that you do not care.
Well, Trump doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
Well, I mean,
How
the thing-
connected is that man, you know?
I say, I said, I hate having this thing, I said, maybe I told you this, I said, the only thing, because sometimes you just go, why does the man just die? And I go, no, I want him to suffer. To suffer.
Okay, mine was so bad that when he got elected the first time,
Yeah.
I posted a curse to him on Facebook. And apparently this curse was so strong, I scared my brother. My brother said, please take that down. I don't know if he thought that I was gonna bring down like karma on me or what,
Poor Moises.
but I kind of wish I had at least copied and pasted it, because I'm like, damn, what was it that it scared him so much? Because I did it in a full moment of like embodied rage. But no, he was like, please take it down. He got afraid.
Yeah.
And it was like, he hated him as much as I do, so I want to remember what I wrote.
So I want to say
Um,
something about this thing about those who have not, they're not selling themselves out like this. Right?
Yeah.
And of course, who comes to mind, and both of you, I know, it's clearly you write about Gloria Anzaldúa, and as you do you, and so I was really interested in this one part where you had talked about her, and I'm trying to see if I can find it. And that there's that beautiful poem that you referred to about Juan Davila, right? He's the curandero, and then the protagonist of the poem is being taught sort of how to do the herbs and all this and everything. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful poem. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily look at those poems, when they're looking at Gloria's work. But one of the things that I realized is that, and then they're talking about this word, that I have a really hard time with, that always talking about subalterns and all this kind of stuff, right? And I thought to myself, the reason why people, and there's a lot of people that love Gloria's work for the wrong reasons. Mm. And there are people that love her for absolutely the right reason. And the reason why her work really works, when it's really working, it's something that I don't know anymore, because I don't know how much has been translated in the process.
Right.
And I know her in her early life, but because she is a subaltern. She's a true subaltern with an education. And I don't like the word subaltern, you know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying I believe in that. I'm just saying that's why you can't buy her. You can't sell her and you can't buy her. But nobody's dealing with that fact. Like, that's what I'm interested in. She began with the wound, and I always feel like still people are kind of, there's something, they're passing over the most important part of her work, and she's dead and gone, and she suffered like hell, right? And so then I go, am I crazy? I always feel like, that's why I say, like, you think you're alone? I think I'm alone. Because I'm looking and I'm seeing, no, and it is indígena, Xicana indígena. She's a brown woman, and the way of understanding, I'm not saying everything is shade, but shade matters, but also what matters is that in her writing process, it was always ceremonial, and
Yes.
the trouble with it is all the language, I'm saying this because you're a good critical writer, you have to make sure that the language never simplifies.
Yeah.
Never is a standard word they're using.
Yeah.
And if people start using those words, stop using them.
Yeah.
Because you lose it. You can't even find words anymore that hasn't been used too much, so it doesn't have resonance anymore. But I was thinking about Gloria because you brought her up in a really very what her role, even the quote you did about metaphor and yeah. And being shaman, so that's always a dangerous word too. Shaman, it's a dangerous word, So, but the thing about, so I say, I think we should all be subalterns. I do know, but I believe it. Like, I feel like just because in other words, what disconnected us is our education, our privilege, first world. I'm not, now I say that it's going to get misinterpreted, and I know, I hate saying these things. But what I mean is that our identity, we shouldn't attach ourselves to those who consider other people subalterns. That's not our language. We don't see them as subaltern. We don't see them as a them necessarily. And that's a critical vantage point.
Yeah.
Even with all our privilege and stupidity because of our privilege, we are not looking at the world like they're there. They're them and we're us all. And that's the trouble also when we're looking at a revolutionary Latinidad in this country. And suddenly, you saw what happened in this election, and I would say, I like Paulo Ramos's book. I think people should read it because she really records what happened among the Cubans, the Puerto Ricans, and part of it was this, what they were fleeing, etc. But also that we didn't have a movement.
Right.
We do not have a viable, revolutionary movement, even if it's not just like, and then I'll say one more thing, I'll stop. My Iranian friend, a wonderful radical woman, had been, a Marxist in Iran and stuff, and fled the Islamic revolution. And then she said, after Trump had come in, she said, well, everybody's saying, well, if it gets this bad because what was supposed to happen when capitalism went to this place, it would all implode. And so then we'll have a revolution, right? And she says, unfortunately, there's no left to have a revolution. And so what you get instead is fascism.
Yeah.
Instead of getting socialism, you're getting fascism. And I said, oh, sister, thank you. You're so smart. Anyway, go ahead. Let's go on.
I want to go back to the wound. And,
Yes.
And I would say, yes, people are either skipping over the wound, or I think my greater problem is people that romanticize the wound. Because for me, like the first visual artist that really hit me was Frida Kahlo. But what do people do? They skip over or they romanticize the pain, and it's not real anymore. So the same way that we're talking about the wound and the border, those things become not real anymore. My big problem with a lot of academic writing around Ansaldúa, I was telling Cherríe yesterday, is the repetition until the point of numbness of pain, wound, trauma. They don't mean anything anymore when people write about them or talk about them. So I want to hear things written, whatever other angle we can do, so we can understand again. Because we don't understand. We are numb to that now.
Yes, I was gonna say, I want to say something about hope, and I want to say something about language. And
take a quick note, because I got to say this next thing before I forget.
We're all like
so going to what Cherríe was saying about the lack of the revolutionary, and about, okay, I can't forget my own point. Okay, what I tell people that the only reason that I still speak Spanish, and because when you think about it, like I am like 3rd generation and 5th generation and whatever else, and a lot of Texas and a lot of indigenous, I tell people whenever I'm talking to them in Spanish that the only reason I still speak Spanish is porque vengo de sangre cabezuda y mal asimilada. Okay, I come from people that are very stubborn and badly assimilated. Otherwise, how does it make sense to say there is an entire population of Texan-born Mexican-American people whose primary language is Spanish? It makes no sense to anybody. But it's this idea of how do we retain our sense of cultura, retain our sense of community, retain our sense of who we are in this country that wants to take all of that away. And not just take it away in a gentle, like, oh, it would be great if you would join us. It's that has taken it away through violence, through shame, through all kinds of co-opting, through economics, through everything else. And that goes to, what happens then when we're voting for someone, and who thinks, who are they? And again, that's why you come back to, this is why they don't want to have cultural, ethnic, racial studies in colleges or in high schools, because if you don't tell people who they are, they no se pueden concientizar. There's no way for them to come to conscious. There's no way for them to have that coraje that's going to impel them to want to change things
Absolutely.
or to reclaim things. That's why you take away their rational reasons to be angry.
You
So
take
sometimes, like now, I'm having a lot of fun right now. I live in, I'm renting a condo from the owner. I am adoring. I'm blasting my Mexican music, my conjunto, my Lefty SM, my Santa Fe Clan, my whatever else, with the door open. And I see all these Trump looking, loving people walking by, looking entirely shocked and like they want to call ICE. And I turn the music up louder, so, you know, and it's just like little things. But people don't even think to do that, to rebel in little ways.
But you know, there is something too, like, I was also remembering things you said earlier. Another, yesterday or something about talking about that one night, I guess you were in Austin and and it was late at night, and you were seeing the stars up, you were at a bus stop. And you went and you go, oh, this is my land, like that, right?
I felt it, I
You
felt it in my body, this is my land.
So it doesn't always have to be the wound, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're going, "No, me siento bien, aquí estoy, this is like this," and that it has history, right? And we don't feel that we have the right. You know, I remember as a little girl, and then my people are from Sonora, right? But I'm a little girl, we lived in LA, we're going into the Sonora Desert, and we get in the car, messes up middle of the night, and I go out, and I'm like 8 years old, and I was looking up at the stars, and it was hot and everything. And nobody said, oh, honey, you're from Sonora. And I go, it felt, I had been there and I knew it, and nobody was going to take that feeling away from me, right? And so how do you cultivate consciousness? It's like you have to be paying attention.
Yes.
And I think that's the point, is that we're all like this, like it's all strategic to have us forget who we are.
One of the things that I found, that I have always found very interesting, is that when I'm talking to people from Mexico, they all assume that either I'm from Mexico or my parents were from Mexico. And so how is it that also on that side, they're not aware that there have been Mexicans here for centuries?
It's crazy, yeah.
Like it's all of this amnesia. It's all of this strategic amnesia
Yes.
that's been put on people. And so again, one of the ways that we come back to what the Xicana Revolutionary Literary Project is how do we remember and reclaim for each other? To say this is what has been here.
Well, this is the only thing that I will say I'm a little bit, this is where I'm hanging my hat on the whole part, right? And that is in the capacity to remember, right? That is in our relationship to the past. That is in our understanding that there is shifting temporalities. And I don't necessarily, I hear what you're saying about like a formal publishing industry that markets, that gets co-opted by a market, and that certain voices kind of rise to the top at a certain, like they assimilate and rise to the top. Like, I'm not thinking about that when I think about what's hopeful for me. I'm thinking about all of the fruits of the civil rights movement. Like, I'm thinking of the aftermath that so many of you have fought for, where there are now Xicana professors, where there are now Xicana artists and visual artists and writers. And I'm excited about those voices, those artists, those people who are returning to ceremony, who are returning to traditional practices, who are in classrooms and who are assigning works where folks can interface with the wound and think through their complicity to settler colonialism, and then who are leaving their classrooms and getting their limpia, or are danzantes, or are doing particular work to sustain community in ways that are remembering. And by that, I mean like refashioning, reconstituting our relationship to this very living set of traditions. Again, we are not bare life. We're not Zoe. We are biopolitically like thriving in culture, tradition, memory, and religious practice. And there's new, I'm thinking of particular collections, right? But not just the collections like Fleshing the Spirit, like not just these collections of poetry. I'm thinking of, oh gosh, Citizen Illegal by Oliva. Like there, I can point to cultural expression, but I can also like not just think about the print. I want to think about the various ways that folks are being bold, just like you, ire'ne, who who return to the huipil, who are happy about their paisa culture, who are bumping corridos, who are unapologetic about being in relationship to their communities and resisting assimilation. That's the spark of hope for me, right? And maybe it's because I'm in Houston at the University of Houston and have these creative writers who are freaking amazing all around me and who are reading both of your works, right? And who are refashioning and reimagining a different way. I think for me, part of my project in this book was to say, what if I take the resistance paradigm away? All we talk about is resistance, 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 and it's important, it's crucial, it's vital, it got me here, but what else are we saying? And I think that Xicanx writers have been talking about things like care and like healing and prayer and spirit. And I imagine a horizon where some will be bold enough to continue speaking that truth in beauty. Like they're there. It is looking very different, particularly because they're under assault. We're watching the unfolding of an administration that's seeking to like completely dismantle everything gained by the civil rights movement. And so like we have to look at things with fresh eyes. We have to do the practice that you grounded us with before this talk, and we have to close our eyes and we have to think of the ways that people will reimagine. I'm thinking of even Yosimar Reyes's work, how he is modeling in and through his queer, undocumented, like artistic and pedagogical practice that like he's brave and bold enough to care. That we're the ones who know how to care, and that it's been what has sustained us. It has been what has sustained us. And I think I don't know, I'm with students every day who give me a smidget of hope. But again, that neoliberal impulse is across partisan lines. It's scary. Anything left unchecked that proliferates within a cultural body like that, it's a cancerous thing. And they're under threat too.
Did I tell you the quote from Roberto St. Lee Rodriguez?
No.
So he posted this on Facebook, I think right after Trump was elected the first time. And I'm surprised I didn't tattoo it on myself. That what we create will be more important than what we resist.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we are more prone to be reactive. And to sometimes privilege or shame each other for choosing to continue creating instead of reacting against whatever few people feel needs to be reacted against. And I'm actually working on a keynote I'm going to deliver next week about what it means to create in these times. So I'm basically I've ended up having to write the part 2 to No Mi Cama, No Mi Canacayo, which was about writing in difficult times, which is the keynote I delivered the first time Trump got elected. And so apparently now, 8 years later, I'm having to write part 2 because we continue to have this problem of how in this world where we are subjected to overwhelm and exhaustion and rage and all these things, how do we continue to create in this environment? And the fact that it is important. And so I keep returning to Dr. Roberto St. Lee Rodriguez's words about what we're creating is more important than what we're resisting.
I think that a lot of it's all good. It's all good. I keep thinking about how you know, we may no longer have an educational, you know, system, but in this country, Department of Education. But what I keep thinking about is how, and I have to do a talk for Puente in next week. And I've been really thinking about this. And what I want to say to them is for them to take risks.
Yeah.
You know, as teachers, that instead of going by what they need to learn X, Y, Z and stuff, make sure that in their teaching, they're teaching them about neoliberalism in the English class, the math, whatever the classes are, that I feel like we have, and I think this is, you know, I've said this before, it is a problem that Chicano studies is not automatically indigenous studies. It is a problem that Chicano studies is not automatically Afrodescendiente studies. It's a problem that we know less about Latin America, you know. I mean, that we know nothing about Latin America. We don't know what the Monroe Doctrine is. I mean, all this stuff is kind of going, you know what the Monroe Doctrine is? It's like, and it's like such basic kinds of things that we have not fortified, and our education was, because we're educators here. We're writers and educators. One of the first questions you ask yourself is, what is my work? So you're useless unless you know what your work is. Well, I finally decided, I guess my work is also teaching, and I wanted just to be writing, but no, it's teaching, which ends up meaning that this is your, you know, however we define our work. And once you know that, then your obligation is to figure out how you are going to subvert the system at every inch of the
Well, okay,
way.
but that goes back to, again, that purpose of what is the purpose of teaching? Am I teaching to make these children or young adults fit into the society the way that Trump wants them to fit into society? Am I teaching them so that they can be socioeconomically advanced? Am I teaching them to assimilate them to the US ideal? Or, I always like Toni Morrison's direction. Am I teaching to set them free?
That's it. I mean, the whole, but you know, like Celie says all the time, not everybody wants to be free. No, but I'm
Yeah,
saying that is a true statement.
Not, well, and
Not
Tony,
everybody wants to be free.
like Tony K.
It's-
Bombara, not everybody wants to heal.
Yeah.
Not everybody,
Can you afford to be well? I
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
saying, can you
Okay.
afford to be well?
do people want to be free? Do people want to be empowered? Do people want to love themselves? Do people want to be in community? And do people want to heal? Do people, all of it?
Well, this question of do people want to heal, as much as we would like to sit in the privilege of health, right, whatever that category is, or wellness or well-being, neoliberalism will stage an encounter with just about everybody at a certain point to decide whether they want to heal. And so when you even when you're saying that, you know, that the medicine is bitter in your new collection, like, and that we Ansaldúa can't be metabolized if you really reckon with what she's saying, right? That like it is in that wounding, in the herida abierta, in the scar itself, right? I just want to echo what you said, Cherríe, because I know you said people are going to come for you, but like the reality is, like, think of the wound, think of the scarring as a fundamentally new expression. That's what a cicatriz is. It's a new expression, a response to that kind of wounding. It's something that you read. It indexes that you have lived. It indexes histories of hurt.
But Amanda, I want to point to something that you wrote in your intro that I think is very important. You were talking about the need to seek medicine. And the thing I think that people don't realize is that the reason that there comes to be a priority on healing is because there is a wound. You have the need to seek medicine because, yes, medicine is bitter. So you have to need it more than you're going to be affected by its bitterness. So if you look for medicine, especially when your child needs to be healed, when you realize you need to be healed, when you realize and can sit with the fact that your community needs to be healed, that's when you look for medicine. Nobody looks for medicine for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And actually, Amanda, you and I also were talking about how people are
No, that's not
understanding.
true. Some people do look for medicine for the fun of it. And that's another part of the problem.
But then
right?
they misunderstand it
that's-
because
exactly.
then you have people that are like looking for peyote and ayahuasca because they're thinking, oh, this will be fun.
Yeah.
But they're not really looking for it as medicine.
No, absolutely. No,
And-
of course.
And what was I gonna say, Amanda?
We were talking that you said something that we were talking earlier about making medicine, creating medicine, what's medicine and what is not medicine. Was it that?
Oh, you and I were talking about what we mean when we are talking about the problem. We were talking about the problem of people misunderstanding medicine. Yeah. Because they don't understand that it is an entire process, that a fragment of it is not medicine. It's a part of it, but it's not medicine, it's a fragment. That there are incomplete, there we go. The problem was that we were talking about incomplete and superficial understandings of what healing was and what the role of a curandera was and how that differed from what a bruja is. I So talking about this term of poet curandera, I have never claimed it. The first time I heard it was Demetria Martinez used it in a blurb.
Yeah.
You used it in your work.
Yeah.
The way that I grew up, the way that I learned that curanderas worked in the community, a curandera never called herself a curandera.
I don't,
You know, that's, she's legit.
If you ever hear a woman say, or a person say, I am a curandera, or I'm a curandera,
Oh,
turn around and walk away.
can we
That-
inscribe
yes.
that somewhere?
oh,
Because,
To all of the
Yes.
raza in
yes, if you
ask
put time,
community, you
if they,
ask community who is.
if they have a price list,
Yeah,
claim it,
córrele, mejor vete.
and you walk away. Because Amanda, you used very important language in your book. You said a community recognized healer.
Yeah,
That's how curanderas
that's
are known.
good.
The community says, you have
They
this
call
problem,
her a curandera.
Yeah.
the problem, you go to Doña so-and-so.
yes.
They have the mano, they have the buena mano, they have the skill, they can help you. But nobody puts out a little sign that says, this is what I am and this is what I do. So I will never say that term in reference to me.
Get it.
I have found it to be of incredible value, because when Demetria said that, I didn't take it as, oh, I'm feeding my ego, this is what I am. I took it as, she is articulating a mandate for me. She is articulating a path I need to be taking, and I need to be walking, and I need to recognize that what I am trying to do through poetry is to heal myself and others. And that, and as we were talking about what the manda is, you know, because if you are creating a certain kind of art, if you are trying to create medicine, you have a manda,
Yeah.
you have a mandate.
Mhm.
And it is, and again, this goes back to spirit, your spirit mandate.
To divine purpose. And I would say too, that the flip side is true. When community says, that's not a curandera, that's a bruja, ojo allí también. Ojo allí también.
And you were saying something really deep about how people are conflating curandera and bruja to, you know,
Yeah.
and sort of collapsing the differences between the two. And I don't know if they're taking an American idea and translating bruja as
That's what it
witch,
is, yeah.
but there's very clear lines that you and I grew up with.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they're real. They're not abstract. I think part of what happens, right? And this is why I mean, amongst with my friends, we don't even call it academia. We call it whack academia, because it is that whack. I think academia asks that we operate with different frames, and that, you know, certain terms get condensed and have become catch-all terms, and they have like these really condensed valences, but like tenemos que hablar en claro, right? We do have to kind of set parameters, and sometimes there are communally mandated parameters, right? That demarcate that, like, you have to be clear. They're not the same thing. And you know, we can read this Salem witch trial history. We can read, I can think of various works where you know, the category of the bruja is deconstructed, and we understand it as just a woman who cannot be like controlled by patriarchy, right? I see the move and the thrust to say like an uncontrollable woman. It's just like when someone is given the epithet bitch, right? Okay, I'll be the bitch, right? But I think where you and I were having that discussion is that there is a long line of a tradition that, and if you have 17, your grandma, your grandma, your great grandma, your great grandma, your great grandma said, no te metas allí porque esa es una bruja, no es curandera, then there's a line there. That's recognizing that, yeah, both are powerful. Brujas are, curanderas are, but what is it that you want, and what is it that you're working, right?
Need to pay good and bad.
Yeah.
So I wanna be aware of our time, yes, and this is great. I do wanna say, and I'm not sure if we have any questions in the room or any questions on the, no, we're good? Okay, and but I do want to say the other part of it is that to bring it kind of full circle, I'm thinking about this week in my family's life, in our personal life and friendship network, and the greater also Black lesbian community, et cetera, people we know in Oakland. We've had at least 4 deaths this week, right? And it started out with Roberto Cordero, and I wanted to make sure we came full circle so I can say a few words about Roberta, but also to say that in our generation, people are dying much more often than were our peers, right? So people just, you know, I'm 72, so people that are either my age or older, and if they get the privilege of living this long, right? So they're going a lot. And I think partly when we're talking about being positive, you know, is that if we're lucky, we've cultivated some kind of spirit practice that makes it allowable to believe that they are our ancestor, to know that they are ancestor. And in that sense that there is a kind of obligation or manda created by their absence now. And what I want to say about Roberta Cordero, who's a Chumash woman here, and when we acknowledged, you know, this from the beginning where there's a land acknowledgement, she was for me and Celia, my partner, and the other co-director, was key in. She was the first person we went to that asked if it was okay if we did Las Maestras Center. And I thank Celia because she's always knows what to do. She said, we're not going to do anything unless they say it's okay. And I kind of go, what if they say no? You know, like that, right? And they didn't say no. And we went to her, and she has been an enormous presence for us. You know, she had a very serious what's it called, aphasia, a stroke, and then aphasia. So she had been an attorney in her younger years and an activist, of course, for coastal activism, etc. But that she lost her ability to speak. And she's somebody that you could sit with for 2 hours and have a conversation because she could speak without speaking. And I say that because I miss her, and I know Celia misses, and Las Maestras Center's gonna miss her, but she really, on a certain level, grounded us to feel like we had a right to be here. And that means everything. And so what I would like to say, if anybody's watching out here, is that spirit really does matter.
Yes.
It does keep you sane, and it does make you feel whole, right? And I think, you know, that, and I appreciate that all of this, you know, because when you put those 3 words together, body, spirit, and mind, you know, that's how we walk in the world, you know, and for some reason or another, I think everybody's sitting in this room, for whatever reason, we're all in different places, but it's somehow we are really fortunate that we can even know that, even a little taste of it, you know, and so from my end, I just want to thank everybody here and all the folks, you know, out there, and you all. It's been really good for me personally, but I honor your work, and we need your work, and we're watching you. Like, so, you guys want to say anything before you go? Okay, so is there questions in our group here?
Questions or comments?
Or comments, yeah.
For this one time, comments are okay.
That's anybody, even you, John.
I had a question that came up for me yesterday, and you all were talking about medicine and how to trust it. And there's a lot of like, you know, talking about like appropriation, commodification in your talk today. But yesterday you were talking about you not wanting to read things that don't have medicine, and wanting to read writers that have medicine. So I'm wondering for you, maybe all 3 of you, what is writing that has medicine? And in the ways that you can speak about.
Can that be heard? Can that be heard?
So Amanda, did you hear any of that?
Yes, I did, and that's a beautiful question.
So I'm gonna start off by saying that the question that I get asked the most often is, what advice do I have for new writers or emerging writers or people that want to write? And what I tell them is, because I think it's the most important and the most difficult thing, is to learn to tell the truth. Yeah, especially to learn to tell yourself the truth. To learn to recognize the truth when you hear it. Not to say that that means that everything that is negative is truthful, or that everything that is positive is truthful, but you have to learn to develop the feel for it. That is the best comparison I can make to learning how to recognize medicine. You have to, I feel like you can't learn it from someone else. You have to develop your own way of recognizing what is medicine and what isn't. And the same way that you have to teach yourself, how do you recognize what is truthful and what is not? Amanda, you want to tackle?
Yeah, I would say that like medicine for me are those moments when I'm apprehending art or creative expressions where I am reminded that I am not fixed in time, that future and past are one. It's in the moments where I hear my ancestors, right? When I can hear my abuelita say, en el espíritu no hay pasado, presente ni futuro. En el espíritu no hay tiempo, right? It's in those works where I feel chronological time breach. That's medicine. And that's also the feeling, again, that you took us to before this talk where we sat in prayer. That's also the feeling of ceremony when I stand before the flame with my family. It's that suspension of time, that suspension of the Taylor clock, that awareness of spirit. That's medicine, and I find it in art. And I eat it up, and those are the works that I think about. I don't go find the works that I can't stand. I go to the works that I love. That's how I use my time and my energy.
I think when you said the thing about the temporalities is what brought me to the idea of also our relationship to our ancestors and passing time, and what I learned actually to a very small degree of the time that I've spent, with any of my sisters in the Yoruba tradition, where spirit came to them, and I knew they weren't faking it, and it was an ancestor. And I'm going, I know they're not faking it. So I know that there's some way in which there is a relationship. That's all I know. I mean, and I say, I don't even know that, but it's like but that gives you a perception of the world that really changes things. And especially when we're seeing so much, passings happening in our lives, now. The other thing I wanted to say, and thank you, said it was correcting me too, that I want to also mention Inés Talamantes, who was also the person that we had initially met, and then we met Roberta. And Roberta had opened up our ceremony here for Las Maestras Center. And Inés was the one we went calling on her to say, is it okay? So we got these, the two elders there, and both of them now have passed. And I guess it's our time to go too. And we wish, everybody, if this is, then all good. I've learned that when it's time to go, it's time to go, and I've learned that I was very fortunate in the time I had with Kitchen Table Women Colored Press, and it changed my life, and it seems to have really impacted a lot of people in New York City. People still talk about it, and I go, oh, wow, man, you just did that for 5 years, I mean, people that did do, Barbara went on. But those kind of things, the work that we do, that we have to know that we give everything into doing it. And when it's time to go, you have to know when it's time to go. So we're grateful, and blessings to all of you out there. And Amanda, you're the bomb, as they say, or they say, right, inappropriate words. But sister, it's been a privilege to work with you. And I wish you every blessing. Okay, we're all good? All right. Adiós. Adiós. Estamos en contacto.
See, Sherry, see, Irene.
Talk to you soon. Are you okay? It looks like almost like you were shaking.
No.
Okay.
I'm not shaking. My knee hurts, but I'm
Okay.
probably shaking my knee.
I
No.
just wanted to say thank you.
Back in the real world.
Thank Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to you both. Thank you.
I want to meet you in person.
I
That's
want to meet
the
you.
background.
We should flip it around so you can see who's in the
Oh,
room.
I mean,
Déjenme ver. Sherry, thank you.
You're welcome, Amanda. Here, this is Coco. You should meet her.
Hola.